Thanks for staying with us tonight. Now, several agreements have been signed between Pretoria and Beijing at the Union buildings.
A meeting happened this morning, an official state visit, in fact. Among these agreements was one on energy, because South Africa, as you well know, is currently still in the grips of load shedding. Now, agreements for the resumption of beef exports with China were also signed.
Exported to the Chinese market. We're also very delighted that China has agreed to reopen the export of beef to China. This is going to give a huge boost to our agricultural sector. Our multilateral cooperation, we've agreed on a number of issues. President Xi Jinping and I have agreed to consult closely on issues of common concern, including in the BRICS context, as well as the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, FOCAC, on the G77 plus China, and also in the G20.
You know, China has donated emergency power equipment with around 170 million rand as South Africa battles to keep the lights on. The country has also pledged around R500 million in what's been called developmental assistance. Let's talk about the energy aspect of the state visit today with the SA Energy Forum's Executive Director, Mr. Heath Madela. A very good evening to you, Mr. Madela. Always good to have you on News at Prime. So, based on what we heard today during the discussions or the briefing by President Ramaphosa and President Xi, are we getting the right sort of assistance from the Chinese when it comes to our electricity problems?
Well, good evening to you, Tembegile, and good evening to the listeners. It's quite problematic to call it assistance. Let's just say it's a beginning of a cooperation, and I wish it could be reworded differently, that the countries are intending to cooperate. China is taking a lead in extending a credit to South Africa in the hope that there is a lot of business that is going to accrue to the Chinese. They are doing this because they will make more money out of this than any other country.
Mm-hmm. And explain that for our viewers who perhaps are not able to catch the briefing, what exactly it will entail. What are they giving us, and what would we then, as you were saying, in terms of getting business, what the trade-off would be for the Chinese?
Yeah, you would know that South Africa is committing itself into what is called Just Energy Transition Investment Plan, which they estimate it will be about 1.5 trillion rand in the next 10 years up until 2033. Inside that Just Energy Transition Investment Plan, in fact, almost all of it is 60,000 megawatt procurement of wind, solar, and battery energy storage. So solar panels and solar equipment, inverters, batteries, and solar panels themselves, as well as the batteries, are made mainly in China, with the exception of South Korea that makes the battery energy storage equipment, but literally everything is made in China. So China is aware that this country is committing to go on the markets, to scramble for whatever financing mechanisms in order to roll out this massive program of 1.5 trillion rand. So it is in that context that Chinese see this as a very, very attractive market for them. But we as South Africa need to just be very careful here to find a way that we can do this with China such that it is mutually beneficial to both countries. This is really what is at the heart of this. So 170 million rand for somebody who's a world supplier to almost all the countries in the world, this is guaranteed money to China. So it's a drop in the ocean. In fact, I calculated it. It is exactly equal to 0.01% of what we will be spending on them.
How exactly do we make it more mutually beneficial to benefit South Africa in particular? Because yes, this will help, for example, alleviate pressure on the national grid. But what else would we need to get in terms of this being the best deal for this country?
At the moment, it's not the best deal because it's on the back of the scaremongering that we need to procure this PV solar equipment in order to combat load shedding. But we are committing to a 10-year program. So the way this would benefit us is to say, what is the cutoff date to keep on importing from China? What are those things that we can't do away with, that we really have to import, but what are those things that we can manufacture here? So if you look into that and we drew a program and ask ourselves to say, well, let's embrace this, but let's also have a serious talk of when is China actually going to come here and set up the factories for the manufacturing of these things, not only for our own consumption, but also for the consumption of the fellow African countries. That's where the opportunity is. Unfortunately, that talk has not been unpacked. All that has been unpacked is that China, 6 companies of China, have agreed to make the PV solar equipment and solar panels available to the South African companies that are going to roll out this. There is no mention of whether this is going to last 2 or 3 years, and we will start seeing South African companies partnering with the Chinese companies to set up production facilities here in South Africa.
So
we haven't heard about that.
You're speaking perhaps to a lack of clear detail on the timelines and how it will all be broken down, and that's a common criticism, is it not, whenever we see state visits or even forums such as the BRICS gathering in South Africa this week, where people say, well, a lot is done, a lot is pledged, and we're told about commitments, but no one ever actually comes back to break down in detail what it will entail. Would I be right to saying that that's all very important detail, especially if we're going to hold government accountable, A, for bringing an end to the power cuts, and B, making sure that this project is seen to its completion?
Absolutely. You see, I like the electricity minister. He's always on top of his game. Maybe it's because he himself is an engineer by profession and a seasoned engineer. The people who should actually be sitting mostly with the Chinese on this business-to-business partnership with China for PV solar equipment across the whole range is a Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. They are the ones who should be sitting there talking about long-term, a period beyond 3 years. It's our own national treasury. Opportunities should have been open to us as South Africans, individuals and companies, to say, guys, those of you who want to go into manufacturing, this is the talk that we've been having with the Chinese as a DTI, Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, and this is a talk we've been having as National Treasury. And on the back of the so-called energy bounce back, this is how we are going to move forward, and these are the opportunities that are going to accrue to you. Let me give you a simple example. Solar panels, to make them here in South Africa, may be a bit of a challenge. But the frame for the solar panel that is made of aluminium, those things could easily be made here in South Africa. So what the Chinese could do is to bring the actual solar mirrors themselves, but fit them here into the actual frame in South Africa. And also the components for the batteries and the components for the inverters. But
and who would make those frames here at home?
Who will make those?
Who would make the frames, the parts that we would be able to basically manufacture ourselves?
Oh, no, you've got aluminium, the companies that make aluminium windows for you. Solar panel frames are nothing different from the aluminium windows that you see being installed in people's homes. A lot of the stuff that they use for manufacturing of the inverters, the solar panels themselves, it is mined here in South Africa. There are companies that have actually started manufacturing solar panels in this country, some of them in Cape Town. I know even like black-owned companies, 100% black-owned companies in KZN that are busy with trials for manufacturing of the solar panels. Those are the people that should have been brought to partner with the Chinese and say, on year 4, you would have signed with the Chinese and your factory will be set up here for full manufacturing of solar panels.
Okay, Mr. Heath Madela, good to speak to you. As always, thank you so much for your time.